I couldn't help but smile as the tow truck disappeared down the road with my old pickup strapped to the back. Standing on the sidewalk, the HOA president had her arms folded across her chest and the widest grin I'd ever seen. She was holding her phone up, recording every second of it, probably already picturing herself uploading the video to the neighborhood Facebook group as her latest triumph. The tow truck driver kept glancing my way like he was waiting for me to start yelling, threaten somebody, or turn the whole thing into a scene. Instead, I adjusted my hat, folded my arms, and smiled. Everyone standing there believed I'd finally been beaten. None of them realized the pickup wasn't the most valuable thing sitting on that road. Before I go any further, let me know where you're watching from by dropping your country in the comments. I always enjoy seeing how far these stories travel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Hit that subscribe button because this story only gets wilder from here. Now, let me explain why I stood there smiling while they hauled my truck away. My name is Daniel Brooks, and I own a 70-acre ranch just outside Pine Ridge. My grandfather purchased this land back in the early 1960s, years before upscale subdivisions and luxury homes started covering the countryside. In those days, all you could see were wide open fields, dusty dirt roads, and miles of cattle fencing. One thing my grandfather always guarded was the narrow gravel road connecting the county highway to our ranch. He paid for every inch of it to be built, handled the maintenance himself year after year, and made sure everyone understood it was private property. When he passed away, the ranch became mine. For a long time, nobody ever questioned who owned that road. Then a developer built an expensive subdivision right beside my property. About a year later, the Homeowners Association was established. At first, everything was friendly. People waved whenever I drove by, and several neighbors even stopped to buy fresh vegetables from my garden. Everything changed after a new HOA president was elected. Her name was Diane Mercer. Diane seemed convinced that every piece of land within sight of the subdivision somehow fell under her authority. Just 3 weeks after taking office, I received the first letter. According to her, my truck violated HOA parking regulations. I laughed when I read it. I wasn't even a member of the HOA, so I tossed the letter aside. Then another one showed up. After that came another. Before long, they were sending complaints about the color of my fence, the roof on my barn, my mailbox, and even the American flag flying outside my workshop. Every notice went straight into the same drawer without another thought. One afternoon, Diane showed up at my front door, carrying a thick folder tucked under her arm. "You'll need to move your truck," she said. "Why?" I asked. "Because it's parked on HOA property." I looked at her for a moment before answering calmly, "No, it's parked on my road." She smiled as though she'd been hoping I'd say exactly that. "We've already confirmed ownership." I simply nodded. "Have you?" She walked away, looking completely certain she had already won. I didn't try to stop her. 6 weeks earlier, while cleaning out my grandfather's old office, I'd come across something unusual. Tucked away inside an old wooden cabinet was a faded yellow envelope with handwriting barely visible across the front. Inside were the original construction permits for the gravel road, detailed engineering plans, maintenance agreements, and a recorded easement document that had been signed decades before the subdivision had ever been built. Those papers revealed something almost nobody else knew. The road wasn't shared, it wasn't public, and it certainly wasn't controlled by the subdivision. It belonged entirely to our ranch. Just to remove every possible doubt, I hired a licensed surveyor. He spent nearly 2 weeks digging through county records before placing brand new survey markers along the property lines. When he finished, he smiled and said, "Mr. Brooks, this is one of the clearest ownership records I've ever reviewed." I thanked him and kept everything to myself. I never mentioned a single word to Diane. Sometimes the quickest way to win an argument is to let the other side become absolutely convinced they're correct. 2 weeks later, I woke up to flashing amber lights outside my house. The HOA had hired a towing company. Several board members stood nearby, watching while neighbors gathered along the sidewalks to see what would happen. Diane proudly announced, "This vehicle has been illegally parked on HOA property for months." The tow truck driver looked at me. "Sir, do you object?" "No." He looked genuinely surprised. "You don't?" "Nope." A few minutes later, my truck was rolling away behind the tow truck. Diane actually clapped her hands. The crew unloaded GPS receivers, survey tripods, measuring equipment, and large official county boundary maps. Before long, people began stepping onto their porches to watch what was happening. Diane walked over with an irritated expression. "What are they doing?" she demanded. "You'll find out soon enough," I answered. The lead surveyor spent nearly an hour carefully checking coordinates and taking precise measurements. Once he was satisfied, he drove a row of bright orange survey stakes directly across the entrance to the subdivision. Confused homeowners slowly gathered around, whispering among themselves. Finally, the surveyor turned toward the crowd. "The officially recorded property lines confirm that this roadway is privately owned by Mr. Daniel Brooks." The entire group fell silent. He continued, "The subdivision entrance connects to this private roadway without any recorded legal access agreement." Diane immediately cut him off. "That's impossible." Without raising his voice, the surveyor handed her certified copies of the county records. The color drained from her face. Less than 30 minutes later, 2 county officials arrived, followed by a sheriff's deputy. The deputy wasn't there to place anyone under arrest. His job was simply to keep everything peaceful, while the county explained exactly what had been uncovered. Because the HOA had authorized the towing of a vehicle from private property they did not own, the entire towing incident had now become the subject of an official investigation. Not long afterward, the owner of the towing company pulled in. He looked far less confident than he had the day before. "I was told the HOA owned this road," he said. One of the county officials shook his head. "They do not." The towing company owner turned toward me and immediately apologized. My truck was delivered back to my ranch later that same evening without costing me a single dollar. But the HOA's problems were only beginning. Over the next several weeks, county officials conducted a complete review of every document connected to the subdivision. During that review, they discovered the original developer had never finalized a permanent legal access agreement for the private roadway leading into the neighborhood. Instead, the HOA board had simply assumed the road belonged to them because residents had been driving across it for years. The county made one thing perfectly clear. Assumptions are not the same as recorded property deeds. The board was instructed to negotiate a proper legal access agreement. Until that happened, every road repair, utility installation, maintenance crew, delivery of heavy equipment, and contractor entering the subdivision required my written permission before using the roadway. Almost overnight, the same people who had laughed while watching my truck get towed started calling to request meetings. Diane asked for one herself. When she sat across the table from me, the confidence she'd displayed only a few days earlier had completely disappeared. "I think we've gotten off on the wrong foot," she said quietly. I smiled. "I think we have. We'd like to resolve this. So would I." Unlike Diane, I had never been interested in getting revenge simply for the sake of revenge. I agreed to a fair legal easement that permanently protected my family's property rights, while also guaranteeing the subdivision residents continued access to their homes. The neighbours appreciated the agreement. Most of them had never wanted any conflict to begin with. About a month later, Diane stepped down as HOA president. The newly elected board personally apologized for everything that had happened. Today, we have a good relationship with the neighborhood. Every once in a while, I still drive my old pickup down that same gravel road. Whenever someone asks why I didn't stop the tow truck that morning, I always give them the same answer. Because sometimes the strongest move isn't arguing with people who think they're right. Sometimes it's simply smiling while they confidently make the biggest mistake of their lives